Well, hello. Welcome back to What That Means Is. I'm your host, Rosalie Drysdale.
I'm Chris Riddell.
And I'm Ken Drysdale.
Thank you for joining us again. This starts the beginning of season 2 of What That Means Is. Today we're starting series 2, and this is episode 1. So we're happy that you joined us, and we're going to get right into it. So today we're going to talk about something that has been on the news a lot lately, and a lot of people are really curious about it. And it is something that is passionate for probably, well, many, many Canadians, to be sure. And what we're looking at today is the stats and the government messaging, specifically on guns. Gun stats, gun confiscation, etc. And we're looking at this because it's been in the press quite a bit recently. So, of course, when that happens, we get statistics, and then we get curious about those statistics. So we have to check those statistics out because that's what we do.
Yeah, and you know, according to the government messaging and a lot of the discussions that are going on, the government has been telling you how incredibly dangerous firearms have been in this country and how many people have been murdered with them. They also talk about I've seen it in almost all of the press about the significant increase in gun homicides in Canada. And so, you know, after having done research on the whole COVID messaging, we thought that this might be a good topic to also do some research on. So what we're going to talk about here today is we've gone to Statistics Canada, and we've actually looked at the statistics as presented by Statistics Canada on the number of homicides using various types of firearms in Canada. And then we went to Health Canada, and we looked up what they are reporting with regard to how many deaths they are reporting on vaccine injuries. And
So we're looking at the lethality of the gun shots and the gun.
well, we're looking at homicides.
Yep, and
with firearms, and then the reported lethality of the vaccines. Now, Chris, you were going to say something about that comparison between the two.
The actual homicides in Canada are required to be reported to police, all of them,
And they investigate them all.
and they investigate them. So you're not getting away with
Not getting away with murder.
Voluntary.
you're not getting away with murder.
Yeah.
Good one, Ken.
Yeah, and and it's not voluntary reporting.
So,
Where the vaccine deaths are, I don't know if voluntary is the right word, but they're not as strictly regulated
Monitoring.
that they have to be investigated and autopsies done on people to confirm 100% that that's what they died of.
yeah, and we did a whole show on that in Series 1. And we talked about the difference between a voluntary reporting system, and it is a voluntary reporting system, because it's left up to the discretion of the medical profession or of people at the time whether or not they report it as a vaccine injury, which is very different than what you would have found as an ex-police officer when you walked
Right.
into a scene and there was somebody laying there dead.
Yeah.
Did you have the discretion to say, no, I don't think that's a murder?
No, no, we didn't. If there was a gun there or a hole that might have looked like it came from a gun, that needed.
But it's so specific though, Chris. Is that I mean, even if somebody simply dies at a home, a policeman has to be called
Yeah.
to verify that. It's not even a homicide necessarily. I mean, homicides for sure, but
Yeah.
even somebody who passes away in their home.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. We'd get calls to check on the well-being of a neighbor or someone in an apartment building that nobody's seen for a while, and you would gain entrance to that premise, and yeah, a lot of times you'd find a deceased person, and then it was a lot of times it might have been natural causes or something that the medical examiner could figure out, but I never remember a deceased person that didn't have an autopsy.
Right.
I just never.
Yeah.
They all did. If there was any kind of death, there was an autopsy.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know that.
And could you say that it wasn't left up to frontline personnel to make the decision as to whether it was a homicide or whether it was a natural cause death? It would go
No.
through a process where
Yeah.
it was reviewed?
Yeah.
Well, that's very different than what's gone on with the vaccine. First off, the system is self-reporting, and we talked about whether speeding
Yeah.
tickets were self-reporting or not. And since it was self-reporting, there were also the frontline people making the decision. And everybody sitting here at this desk know folks that had reactions that were quite obviously reactions. And when they went to the hospital, they were told by frontline personnel, no, it's not a reaction to the vaccine. We're not going to report it. So the reason we tell you all of that is because we are comparing numbers reported by the people who voluntarily reported by the people that are in charge of the vaccines and have the most to lose from the vaccines. We're comparing those numbers that they are reporting to the numbers that were investigated by police as homicides. There's a difference here, and we want to make sure we all understand that.
Well, let's get into those numbers, Ken. I mean, sorry.
Sorry.
No,
Oh, I was
go
just going to ask Ken, could you explain the time difference?
Oh, yeah.
The portion.
Absolutely. Now, again, this was an interesting statistics to consider, because when you look at a year, a 12-month period of time in Canada, and you talk about homicides, you have to consider that all 38 million people in Canada are at risk, to whatever that degree is, are at risk to being involved in a homicide. All 38 million over a 12-month period, and then you look at the next 12-month period. Vaccines aren't like that, because if you were to compare a year where only one person got a vaccine, and there was no deaths or adverse effects from them, how do you compare that to the guns? So when we talk about the numbers, what we were talking about is the vaccine deaths reported by Health Canada as of May 2022, and of course Canada started giving out the vaccines in December 14th, I think, 2020. So this is a little more than a year of data, but according to Health Canada, at the time that they reported this data, May 2022, only 32,475,000 people in Canada had actually gotten the vaccine. So just to recap that, in a year when you're looking at homicide deaths, 38 million Canadians are in that risk group.
Right.
When you look at the deaths that are reporting because of vaccines, you're certainly looking at probably a 13 or a 14-month time period, but you're only looking at 32 million Canadians that were at risk of it because only 32 million Canadians got the shot.
And that's if 32 million Canadians actually got the shot, which we don't really know.
And again, just like before, when we were looking at the investigative report, we're not questioning the government's numbers as they've reported them. We're just reporting them as is.
Right.
And as you know, there's a lot of different things here. You know, the voluntary reporting system, even the way they tested for it, and there's been a whole lot of reports lately in the news about the quality control that went into these vaccines. So the vaccine that you got in Winnipeg may not have been the same as the one you got in Edmonton or in Calgary or in Ottawa, or even from a day-to-day basis, they vary depending on who the manufacturer was.
So I know we mentioned this before, but are you saying there might be some missing information?
For those of you who haven't been following all of our shows, Chris brought this up in episode 13. It was one of his final comments that struck him the most, was that all of the missing information that they had, and yet they still authorized it and started pushing it into people's arms.
Yeah. And there's more in this study.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So who wants to talk about the numbers here?
Well, you go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
First of all three categories, there was homicides using a handgun, there was homicides using a rifle or shotgun.
Well, the total of that was...
Yeah, the total of that was 219, and then there was also illegal firearms, which included fully automatic weapons, which were all these illegal since 1977. There were 57 of these, which also included banned firearms. So a total of all three categories was 276 homicides
In
in
2020.
Canada. In 2020, yeah. In the calendar year 2020, 276.
Across the entire population
Yeah.
of 38 million people in Canada.
Yeah. One of the interesting things right off the bat is Stats Canada reported that 79% of all gang-related homicides were committed with firearms.
And of those 276 homicides, 148 were gang-related.
148.
So 140, wait a minute, Chris, I just want to make sure everybody gets this right.
Yep.
So out of 276 total homicides with firearms in Canada, and by the way, that also included, I believe, you could correct me on this, but I believe that also included murders with nail guns.
Nail guns,
flare
pellet
guns.
guns, and flare guns.
And flare. So what we're talking about here is, again, total number of homicides reported by Statistics Canada in 2020 were 276. And of the 276, 118 of them were carried out by gangs. In other words, professional
Right.
murders, professional hits, gang-related violence. So this is a little different. And if I was comparing this to vaccines, it would be like some criminal element in the parking lot of Kmart with a bunch of stuff and syringes giving
Yeah.
it to people. It's kind of the same thing. But just for now, we're gonna put that in our back pocket, and we're gonna continue to consider all 276 murders in Canada with firearms. And so, Chris, you want to talk a little bit about the COVID vaccine deaths as reported by Canada?
So we just want to make sure before we move on that everybody knows there was a blog post done with all these stats and what we're talking about right now on www.thetruefactsc19.com, and it's called Gun Control and V Safety Facts. This is what it looks like. So by all means, if you want to, go to the blog post and follow along. Everything that we're talking about, it's all we're using this as a guideline.
And that blog post was posted January 11th. So we're posting about 5 or 6 different blog posts a week. So you'll have to page back a little bit, but again, it was on January 11th that we posted.
So we talked a little bit about some of the stats already at this point, the homicide stats and the different kinds of guns, gang related. But now we're going to jump to some stats with the vaccine deaths in Canada
Right.
as of May 20th.
May 2022.
That's right, 2022, yeah.
The COVID vaccine deaths in Canada reported from Stats Canada was 339 deaths reported to be related to COVID-19 vaccine reactions.
Now, the other important part about that is, again, at the time, according to Health Canada, they had injected about 32,475,000 Canadians with this. So there were 339 reported deaths from vaccine, and there were 32,475,000 people injected.
So the difference in the totals already, as we're seeing it, is 276
With firearms.
homicides with firearms and 339 deaths from the vaccines.
Right, and further down, and again, what you can see, we're looking at. This was an infographic page that's available. Actually, it's available on our website right at the front. It's called Gun Safety versus Vaccine Safety, and you can also access it on the blog post where Rosalie was talking before. But just compare those numbers. So we had 339 reported deaths with vaccine, and we had 276 reports of homicides with firearms.
Right.
And just to put that in perspective, the total vaccine deaths are 123% higher than the total deaths reported due to firearms. The rate of vaccine deaths is vaccine deaths is 142% higher than all gun-related homicides. But if you exclude the gang-related homicides from that total, because remember we said out of the 276 homicides, 118 of them were professional hits.
Right.
Which, of course, those professional hits aren't going to be regulated at all by another law. I mean, after all, Chris, you're the law expert here.
Wow.
Is homicide illegal in Canada?
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness! So we're going to put another law in the books and take away firearms from legal gun owners, and it won't have any effect at all on 118 of them that were professional hits. So
And just to talk a little bit about professional hits, I don't think that was 118 John Wick lookalikes riding around taking people out. I think it might have been a little more greasy than that.
a little more gritty.
Yeah, a little more gritty, a little more greasy, but maybe not even professional. Semi-pro maybe.
Yeah. So if you were to subtract out the professional hits or gang-related hits, then the vaccine deaths reported by Health Canada were 214% higher than the homicides that weren't professionally carried out.
Wow.
But if you listen to the reporting from our government, you would think
Right.
that there's no issues with vaccine deaths at all, As a matter of fact, on the Health Canada site, and there's links to it on this information sheet, by the way, you can click and see yourself. They're still reporting that these are reported deaths by vaccine, but they haven't confirmed them. Now that's interesting because that line has been on there for months and months and months and months. And how long does it take to confirm, do you think? Are they doing autopsies? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe there's some health professional out there who's in the know and can tell us. Now, the other thing that's extremely interesting on this, and now you can see I'm paging through the blog post. We did some nice printout of it here. And the other thing that they kept telling us, and they keep telling us on the press, is how the number of homicides with firearms has been increasing in Canada. It's got to the point where it's just completely insane. And I want to say that any one homicide death, no matter what they use, is bad, and it's completely insane. It's unacceptable. But let's just talk about their messaging. Now, in the blog post, we've reproduced, and it's just a screen capture right from Statistics Canada's website. And just like they did with COVID, one of the tricks they played on you was they gave you the absolute numbers of deaths, and they compared it year over year, the absolute number of homicides with firearms. And this chart that I'm referring to here goes from 2000 all the way up to 2020. And if you look at, and it's split into various columns, and there's a handgun column, there's a rifle or shotgun column, there's an other firearm-like weapons, and then there's a total. And you'll notice that if you just look at handguns, in the year 2000, there were 108 reported homicides with handguns, and in 2020, there was 135 handguns, so the number has gone up. But just like how they reported for COVID, what they didn't tell you is that the population of Canada went up by about 7 million people. So in order to take that into account, what you do is you divide the number of homicides by the population. And then you can get what's called a rate. In other words, how many people are being murdered with these firearms in Canada per 100,000 population. And if you look at the year 2000 for handguns, you'll see that right next to the 108 number, there's a ratio of 0.35. So there's 0.35 people being murdered with handguns in Canada in 2000. Now, if you look down that column, you'll see 2006, it was 0.36, went down in 2002, so on and so forth, went up in 2005 all the way up to 0.41, 2007, 0.38, 2017, 0.4, 2020, guess what? 0.36.
Yeah.
So from 2000 to 2020,
Yeah.
certainly it went from 108 absolute number to 135, but the population increased by 7 or 8 million people, so that the rate of homicide is identical.
Yeah.
0.35 compared to 0.36. If you look at rifles and shotguns, those are the things. Now remember, handguns are already restricted weapons. You have to have a special license. You can't just carry it around in your pocket like in the Wild Wild West. You know, you can only take it from
Or America.
Yeah, you have to be a member of a gun club.
Yeah.
You can only transport it from your home to the gun club. If you're doing anything else, that's illegal already.
Or you have to steal one.
Or you have to steal one, which is illegal already.
Right.
Then look at rifles and shotguns. They're not restricted weapons. I mean, you have to have a license, but they're not what they call restricted. And if you look once again at the year 2000, this is the second thing, rifles or shotguns. And by the way, just for everybody will know, this is being displayed on our projection screens behind us, so you can follow right along. You'll notice that, again, the same story. The numbers, the absolute number in 2000 was 67 homicides, and the absolute number in 2020 was 84, but the ratio, in other words, how many homicides there were per 100,000 Canadians, is exactly the same. 0.22 in 2000, 0.22 in 2020.
We're quite a peaceful country.
Absolutely. The other firearms, most of these are illegal weapons, like machine guns. They're illegal. They've been illegal for 40 years or 50 years, something like that. And there has been an increasing amount there, but those are illegal weapons, which
Right.
are likely being used by
Makes sense,
gangs
yeah.
and professional hits. You'll also notice that they include a section in there called firearm-like weapons, which are nail guns,
Pellet guns,
pellet guns,
flare guns.
flare guns.
Yeah.
Incredible to me. So, what you can see from this is that when the reporters from CBC are screaming about how homicides are out of control in Canada and they've gone up and up and up and up and up. That's not quite true, is it? If you look at the data, just like they did with COVID, if you look at the data and don't account for the increasing population over 22 years, then you could argue that the murders have been going up. But when you consider human nature and you look at the rate of homicides per 100,000 people, it's exactly the same. Folks, it's not going up. The only category that was going up from a percentage standpoint or even from a numerical standpoint are the illegal weapons in column 3.
Yeah.
Right.
The illegal weapons. So how is a confiscation of guns, of hunting rifles,
Justified.
justified?
Yeah, you got to ask yourself the question: what's going on?
Yeah.
Why? Why is that happening?
Well, the other interesting thing that Chris and I were talking about before was, they keep talking about, a certain type of rifle. They keep talking about,
Right.
what's it called?
The AR-15,
Well, but
Or
what do they
the-
call that? They
a
call that
semi-automatic rifle.
no,
Or
they call it
fully
assault
automatic?
weapons.
Assault weapon.
Assault
Yeah.
weapons.
Yeah.
What's an assault weapon?
a hammer could be an assault weapon.
Yeah.
Well, that's true, but what they're basing this on is the look.
right.
If it looks like it's scary, it's an assault weapon.
Yeah.
Because you can have an ordinary looking 22 caliber rifle, which is a semi-automatic, and that's not being banned, and you can decorate that gun up and put a handle on the top of it,
Yep.
paint it black, and it's all of a sudden an assault.
Or put a scope
Weapon,
on it, which
right.
is even more threatening.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think what we want to, you guys check this out for yourself. The links are all in the blog post and it's on the information sheet. If you want to download the information sheet from our website, you can. And the links to Statistics Canada, to Health Canada, they're all there. And the same in this blog post. Once again, before we move on with that, maybe we want to, again, talk about putting things in perspective.
Well,
love
I was
putting
just
things
going to
in
say that what are you kind of aiming towards the verses, the related, the
Yeah.
guns versus the COVID.
Well,
deaths and-
we talked about that, but let's just keep in mind there were 276 reported homicides in 2020 using firearms altogether, all
Right.
kinds of firearms, including the ones that are already illegal, and the ones that were carried out by professional murders, gangs,
Yeah.
hitmen, whatever.
So can I just ask you a question though? That's 276 that are including the 57 illegal ones since 1977. Did they include those in the stats?
Yes.
So they're including from something that's been illegal since 1977.
Yeah.
I guess to boost their numbers.
Well, you know what? I can't say what's in their heart, right?
Okay.
We talked about this before. I can
You
tell you
can't,
what
but-
the numbers are, but because you always tell me what's in my heart.
I don't know. I tend to project a little bit.
But to put this in perspective, again in the blog post, and it's in the investigative report, by the way. There's a table that it's actually taken. We took it right from page 37 of our investigative report, but it gives in 2020 breaks the statistics of all mortality in Canada down into different age groups, and we report what the numbers are. And I think it's just important that
Yeah.
there were 276 homicides with guns. There were how many suicides?
3,839 total suicides.
So 3,800 and what was that, Chris?
3839.
Yeah.
3,839 suicides
Right.
compared to 276 homicides.
Right.
Yeah.
Now that's a 15, 150% more. Is that-
Yeah. Close. Yeah.
It's like 15
No,
times
15 times.
more.
Yeah.
No, that's homicides.
Yeah, I thought you said homicide.
That's all homicides, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was total
Gotcha.
homicides,
Yeah.
not including just
I
gun
see.
related to
Exactly.
firearms.
So suicides were 15 times or 1,500% higher than this. Now, Chris and Rosalie, do you folks, maybe Rosalie wouldn't because she's only 23, but do you remember, Chris, how much money our Canadian government spent on the gun registry?
It was it was quite a high number. It
2
was,
billion.
Yeah, it was over $1 billion, and they had set a budget of a few million at one point, and it went to over $2 billion.
Because one of the arguments against it at the beginning was that they used Australia. Australia did this first, and they spent $1 billion. So the Canadian government said, "Oh, we won't. That won't cost us anywhere near that. $2 billion later." And I think the sidewalks probably in Mr. Chrétien's riding are made of gold now.
Yeah.
But after spending that $2 billion, and I'm going in a couple different places on this, folks, so bear with me. But Chris, where is that registry now?
They say that it doesn't exist.
Except in Quebec.
Correct.
So you spent $2 billion on a gun registry that they were only going to spend a couple million on. They actually threw it out across Canada officially. As a matter of fact, Chris had a meeting with our MP, member of Parliament, just a few weeks ago, and the member of Parliament assured him, right, that the gun registry was no more.
No more.
So they took $2 billion and threw it out the window. Now we're on, the other place I'm going with this is, can you imagine spending that $2 billion on suicide prevention when there was 1,500% or more suicides than there were homicides with guns? And it was just throwing away money. And now we're going to do something again. They're talking about confiscations. They're talking about purchases.
Yeah, buybacks.
And folks, you know, this has been in the works for a long, long time, because guns were only placed under the purview of the federal government in 1987. Somebody can correct me on this, send me an email on this, but you see, guns are private property, and private property comes under the purview of the provinces. It's not
Right.
part of the federal. And so in and about in the late 1980s, the government added gun ownership and the whole registration program to the criminal code. And prior to that, it wasn't part of the criminal code, so they had no jurisdiction over personal property. That was provincial jurisdiction. So this was in the works for a long, long time. And you got to wonder that if they're doing that kind of planning, 40 years of planning, and 40 years of step-by-step incremental steps, my God, where would we be if they were preventing suicide that way? Where would we be if they were some of the other things on here? You know, influenza was 5,309 deaths due to the flu in 2020. Compare
Cancers, malignant neoplasms. I mean, the high numbers. Heart disease,
that. Yeah, I'm just looking through this now.
diabetes.
I mean, my goodness, I'm just looking over here and I'm just shocked at something.
Yeah.
Hernias.
Yeah.
537 people died of hernias.
Peptic ulcers, 549.
But then there's the other causes.
Oh,
Then there's other causes.
64,000.
Oh no.
Almost 64,500.
64,432.
Maybe they should spend some money on finding out what those causes are. That's a lot of people.
Accidents. You know how many accidents there were in 2020, Chris, that took somebody's life? 488. Sorry, I'm reading, I'm using my computer glasses today,
Yeah.
not my reading glasses.
Yeah.
So, folks, we've given you the facts. You might be able to, somebody might argue a little bit one way or the other. You know, when we did the blog post, someone emailed me and said, well, their neighbor was saying we didn't include suicide and homicides, suicides with guns, and we didn't. But if someone is at the point in their lives where they take their life with a gun, they're going to take their life by other means if a gun isn't available. And I think that someone who is in that kind of a condition, there's many different ways that they can kill themselves. So that is a suicide. We haven't included that. We've talked about homicides. And again, we're trying to be totally upfront. Unlike the government reporting to you, we want you to know all the different aspects of this. Is there anything else here? I mean, I'm just looking down the list. As Rosalie said, 80,965 deaths due to cancer. 64,430 other causes. I mean,
Well, the other causes section has me scratching my head again, because here we go again with the missing information when this is a Stats Canada report, and there was 50 different rows of causes of death, from war to suicide to pregnancy to salmonella to diabetes, HIV. A lot of things covered here, and they still have 1 out of every 5 people that died, other causes.
Yeah.
That's a head scratcher.
Now,
But anyway,
Yeah.
there was another thing we talked about a little earlier off camera, and that was the city of Winnipeg police, when this gun confiscation was first announced, actually did a press conference, and we're showing you on the big screen right now that conference, where essentially the police, Winnipeg police, said this won't make any difference with the murders. It will make no
it
difference.
won't make police work any easier.
No. And so you can watch that video. You know, we've shown you a clip of it here. We'll give you a link in the description so that you can go and find it for yourself. So what is, and again, this is a factual show, but factual or not, we can ask questions. I might not answer them for you. Maybe you guys want to answer
Well,
them.
you know, the show is called What That Means Is, and so we try to disseminate numbers because numbers don't lie. So we've already given you some numbers for you to kind of think about and sort of sift through in your very capable minds and capable powers of understanding and comprehension. But, you know, it does bring up some questions. Why? I mean, why? Why this thrust for confiscation? I mean, it really begs the question, why? And I don't think there's a good answer. There's not a satisfactory answer, other than
Well,
my suspicions.
I'll say it.
You say it.
It almost looks like the government is trying to disarm the population.
Mhm.
And
And
that-
then you wonder, why is that?
yeah, you do, exactly.
It's happened in Australia.
That's what it's looking for. It's happened in a lot of countries just prior to some other things going on.
Right.
Once the country's disarmed.
Yep.
So,
And we don't have an amendment like the States does to, you know, to fight against that.
But that hasn't stopped them there. And you
No.
know, you've
No.
made a really good point on that. You know, what Rosalie's referring to is what's called the Second Amendment in the United States, which is a right to own and bear arms. In the states, in the United States, who have actually put the most draconian laws, additional laws to try to take away that right, which is Illinois, where Chicago is, and New York State, which is New York City. Those are the highest, two of the highest places where there's gun homicides,
Right.
along with
It's crime.
with
Crime.
some of the other Midwest states. I'm just trying to think of what the names are, but they escape me at the moment. But the point being is that you can put in all these draconian laws, but it doesn't stop the criminal.
no.
Exactly.
What it does is it disarms the legal,
law-abiding citizen.
law-abiding citizens. And I can tell you that personally, we're concerned. You know, personally, I'm concerned about this. We don't live in an urban area. You know, we're not living in Toronto. We're not living in Montreal. If I phone the police because someone's trying to kill me or they're breaking into my house, I hate to say this, I am a supporter of the police, but if they show up, it's going to be a long time after I make that call, and I'm not talking about 3 minutes. I'm talking about an hour or more.
Yeah.
You know, we live, and we live like a lot of Canadians. You know, a lot of us Canadians live in rural areas. Not everybody lives in Montreal or Toronto or Vancouver, and not taking anything away from those folks. But there is a different requirement in different parts of the country. And so, you know, we don't try to force people to do something they don't want to do.
Right.
But we also don't try to force people or take things away that there's really statistically no risk for.
Well, and it's not only for self-defense. People hobby, they target
Yep.
shoot, they have
They hunt.
hunt.
Sport
This is the
shooting.
majority of people that own
Yeah.
guns. I mean, nobody's doing it just to walk around like a tough guy.
No.
You know, this is not what it's about. This is about having our freedoms.
Yeah.
It's about being free. Look, the people that own guns, when you go through your gun, when you go through the session of learning, you know, when you
To
get
get
your
your
training to
possession
get
and
your
acquisition license. yeah.
Yes, which I've been through, which you'd think I'd know what it's called.
Well, wait, but that's a really interesting point. Brenda Lucky, she's the head RCMP officer, doesn't know what a PAL was. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, she was in a Commons committee, I believe it was, or a Senate committee, being asked about gun laws when they announced this thing, and she said she didn't know what a PAL was. So Rose,
Yeah.
you're in good company.
Yeah, well,
Brenda Lucky
yeah,
doesn't know.
Yeah. So when you go through the training, they are very definitive and go over it over and over and over again. The protocol. You got to be safe. How to store. How to So law abiding citizens know how to do that, and we gladly adhere to that. There's no issue with law abiding citizens. Keep it contained. Don't keep it loaded in your house. Keep it away from children. All those things.
Locked cabinet. Sugar
Lock,
guards.
all that stuff. So there's no issue. So it really does beg the question. Come on, why are you wanting to buy it back? Why are you trying to confiscate? You know what? You're up to something. That's all there's to it.
Well, historically, that's always the way it's gone. But I don't want to miss a point. Now, Chris is going to be a deer in the headlights here, I think, but we'll see.
Never.
But I know Chris was telling me about an experiment he did at home some time ago with one of his rifles. So, I think it's interesting that, Chris, he's an inquisitive guy, curiosity, and he did a little experiment about firearms.
He's
while
also
ago.
a scientist, a firearms
Right.
scientist.
Not. Yeah. I actually took one of my firearms and I put it on the kitchen table and I just backed away and watched it for probably 20 minutes. Yeah.
And what did it do, Chris?
It did not kill anybody. It
Did it-
didn't shoot
Did
anybody.
it move even?
It didn't even move. And I didn't even tell
Wow.
it not to move.
Wow.
And I wasn't pointing
Whoa.
another firearm at it at
No.
the time.
So it was well behaved?
Really well behaved.
So
yeah.
it was submissive.
That's a good word for it, Rosalie. That's exactly what it was. Yeah.
What occurs to me is that they do studies on everything. I mean, we were all amazed. It's this time of year, the close of the year that we just went through, where people start coming out with these reports about, the government of Canada sponsored this study or sponsored how many mosquitoes stand up when they take a pee, and all those kinds of things. And an interesting study, and I'm not sure how you would do it, but of course I'm not getting millions of dollars to do studies, is how, if we were to take away all the guns in Canada, period, and somehow we were to stop the criminals from having guns, right? Let's just do that. So, how much do you think the homicides and the suicides would go down? Do you think people would find alternative means?
Yeah.
Do you think that gang member who pulled out an illegal AR-15 and gunned down 3 people in the opposing gang's club would not find some other way to murder them with maybe baseball bats or swords or knives or something? So just from an academic standpoint, how come there's no studies on what these effects might be? How come it's all rhetoric? How come it's fraudulent rhetoric where they're telling you things in a certain way but hiding the truth to you, forgetting that there's 8 million additional Canadians in the country, not taking that into account.
Once again, arithmetic gaslighting.
Increase the
say?
fear.
Increase the fear.
Increase the fear.
Well, with that, I think we've provided you with a lot of things to think about, a lot of facts.
I got one more thing I'd like to add, if we could.
Yes, sir.
When they start talking about gun control, if you follow or know somebody who works at Cabela's, a place they sell guns, the mere mention of more gun control, the gun sales go through the roof.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's right.
And you gotta ask yourself, why is that? The mere mention of it, the sales go through the roof. They called
good point.
Trudeau the gun salesman of the year when he comes up with this stuff. Barack Obama was the gun salesman of all time because he was trying to disarm his nation.
Again, you have to ask
Yeah,
why.
you
Why?
gotta ask why.
Well, I ask you a question about that, because you said, Cabela said this, Cabela
Yeah.
said that. How many of those, I wonder, and I'm just throwing it out there, how many of those 118 total homicides done by gangs with illegal firearms do you think were purchased at Cabela's with a PAL?
One other thing I wanted to add was years ago when I took my possession and acquisition license as well as my hunter safety, you waited till you would call and express interest in getting that certificate, and they'd say, okay, well, as soon as I got 8 people, I'll run a class. And you might get called 3 months, 4 months, 5 months later, and they'd have 8 people, and the firearms person would put a class on. Now you would call to say, yeah, I'd like to get my hunter safety or my possession acquisition license, and they'll tell you, oh, okay, well, we're running a couple classes a week, but we don't have any openings for 6 months.
Yeah.
So that's a dramatic change in the amount of interest.
What
in
does that
being,
tell
in
you?
being a lot of law-abiding gun owner.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why are the numbers
Yeah.
in these statistics not showing that maybe there's 10 times as many law-abiding gun owners now than there was in 2000
Yeah.
or 2015? We don't know.
Mhm.
Somebody will know, but
Yeah, you'd have to express it just the same as we did with the numbers of the of the homicides. You have to express it how many guns owned by Canadians in 100,000 population, and then you'd know. And our impression is it's
Yeah.
going way up.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting statistic.
Yeah.
Statistic, because I'm sure that doesn't mean the crime rate would go up.
Well,
No.
folks,
Yeah.
I think that is going to conclude our first episode of Series 2. I hope you've enjoyed it. We'll be back shortly with a whole bunch new topics coming up.
I would like to just leave us with one thing. Whenever you can, act as a liberator. Freedom, dignity, and wealth. These three together constitute the greatest happiness of humanity. If you bequeath all three to your people, their love for you will never die.
So that's completely opposite to what they're doing here in Canada.
Because even as you say, they're going out now to get the license. Well,
Right.
people want their freedom. This is not a nefarious thing. People, I gotta get my murder in. People want to have freedom.
they want their freedom.
They want to.
Any final thoughts, Chris?
Just one thing that was pointed out to me, that if you want to have peace, you got to be prepared for war.
Wow. Wow.
With that, folks, remember to drop us an email. There's along the ribbon at the bottom, there's our email address. There's a place where it gives you the website where you can download the report, or you can download the infographic sheets, or you can download the blog posts. So with that, thank you very much for letting us into your home
Thank you.
and spending some time with us.
Thanks,
Thank
Chris.
you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Rosalie. Thank you very much.
And we'll see you next time.
See ya.